I often will be like. Stuff. You know, my collection. So nobody. Nobody. Actually, like core of my pride. You don't even think it's okay. Yeah. You all Saturday night? Yeah. Whatever you guys want. Yeah, we have to figure out, we have to go for in the afternoon, but yeah, and we'll get it. Oh, okay. I thought you guys were burning. Saturday. Yeah. I got. Yeah. When's the next time, I mean, when you say in a while, what's the time frame? In the last, yeah, well, you can. This is to, sorry, that's to the travel around, you know, if they're close to home, or is it that activity? No, it's much. But 7:30, I do. I just sleep well. I think you actually watch. It's the only other thing. I'm so sorry. Remember, you're done. Just that, sure. Okay. Meeting's live. Like, doesn't support them. Idiot to say no. You know, just roll the dice, man. Well, yeah. It's like cheap. I mean, you know, you're like, and this optimism is good. And so, yeah, that helps me. So, yes. It's true. I mean, especially like, I think about it, it's like, you know, active. I'm actually. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. But like, you know, biking, I know.
We can go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here, everybody, staff, on this rainy afternoon. Call the meeting to order. I'll ask our secretary to call the roll.
Chair Kaplan.
Here.
Vice Chair O'Connell.
Here.
Harish Gudger.
Here.
Matt Harris.
Present.
Praveen Kathal.
Here.
Hillary Orr. Kirsten Phelps. Kevin Greenleaf. Jaisha Thomas.
Present.
Arthur Wicks.
Here.
Jamal Scobie.
Here.
Chair Kaplan, you have a quorum. Those absent are Hillary Orr, Kirsten Phelps, and Kevin Greenleaf.
Those three all have excused absences, so we've got full attendance. We're going to have for tonight. Our first order of business is the public hearing on the FY 2027 budget. I have been advised as I look around, I see only staff in the room. We may have a member of the public here. We have been talking about the budget for the last few months, but now this is our time to hear testimony because we know what the city subsidy is going to be because they have completed their portion of the budget process. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody in the room who would like to be recognized to speak at the budget public hearing. Staff has advised me that there are no members of the public who are on the Zoom. Is that still the case?
There is one. Not sure.
Okay.
He wants to speak.
I'd invite that individual if they wish to speak to use the raise hand feature so we can recognize them. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. No? Okay. Well, in that case, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing on the budget. We will adopt the budget at our June. I'll move on to the chair's report. So first, just want to acknowledge in June, we talked about this, I think, at our March meeting, that the DASH Advisory Committee will be joining us to give a presentation. Jesse and I had met with the chair and vice chair a couple of months ago to hear about the work they're doing. They were very interested in kind of our board's feedback and input on how they can be most effective. They've had Nathaniel Cartagena has been their chair now for a couple of years, and they're doing some really exciting things. And so they want to just share with us. We were planning also as kind of a kickoff to that meeting and to encourage more attendance from their members, just to have kind of a light meal and some time for socializing and networking at the beginning of that. I spoke with Nathaniel. It sounds like actually he's not gonna need as much time as I thought. He only asked for 10 minutes. I was thinking they were gonna want more, because it sounded like they were gonna have each of their subcommittee chairs present. So I'll go back and confirm with him and let him know our June agenda is fairly light, and so we can kind of extend as much time as they want. But I'm really excited. It's the first time they've come to speak with us, and really interested to hear the things that they're working on. Also wanted to just kind of put a cap on what we talked about last month after the stockholders meeting, engagement with Councilman Chapman. I had written a draft before I came to the meeting, had talked with all of you and got some excellent feedback on sort of how to approach this and kind of how to think about, you know, the no vote on the board slate. And so I ripped up the draft that I had and rewrote it based upon all your input, and sent it to him. I basically said that, you know, it's very important for the board, for us as individuals and collectively for us to engage in kind of self-evaluation and reflection on, you know, whether we are serving the stockholders who we are accountable to, and just looking for information and, you know, input on whether we're doing that, and asking, you know, that if there are concerns, that they come to us before we sit down in the formal session at the stockholders meeting, because we can be more thoughtful about responding to them. And, you know, invited him to, you know, to talk with me anytime he wants about kind of board governance or how we can do better. I mentioned to him the idea that I had shared with all of you, and just said it was something I had thought of, about potentially splitting up the board slate and allowing council member or stockholders to vote individually on board members. And I just asked, is that something you would be interested in having us look at more closely? I haven't received a response, but it acknowledged that the email hit right at the end of the budget period when council was extremely busy. But, you know, I'm glad that I was able, kind of as speaking for the board, to kind of, you know, address some of those concerns proactively and to invite dialogue. And we will be meeting with the stockholders in September. And so I think that would be a very appropriate time to talk about governance if they want to put that on the agenda. And so hopefully I've given him some thoughts, but also understand that if it's not something that, you know, he either addresses publicly or privately, that it may not have been that important to him, and it's just something we can kind of close that chapter on and move on. But I really appreciate all of you helping me to craft an email that I think was much more effective and didn't overcorrect for something that may not be a very big issue. So and appreciate the feedback that we not make any changes, you know, rashly, or that we do that deliberately and as a group. And so certainly if there are any ideas that come from the stockholders, if we hear about them in September, we can take those back and reflect on them, or we can, you know, we'll go ahead and kind of cross that bridge when we get there. So thank you again for that. I know that we have our nominating committee, Matt and Arish, have met and have submitted a slate of officers. I'm going to turn this over to Matt and Arish to run this portion of the meeting and to take the vote on the board slate.
Thank you all, and we appreciate your responsiveness to our outreach. I'd written a letter, and about 5 minutes later, Arish tore it up and told me, no, this is how we did it last year. So what you see is Arish's, so I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, no.
Thank you for correcting me.
No, it's all good. I think with the changes last year were just to formalize the process a little bit and get more of a template process that we can follow every year. I think you guys see the slate that we're nominating. To be honest, there weren't any volunteers last year. There were a few more folks in the mix, but this year it's just the standard slate. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions.
Do we want to make a motion to adopt this slate as presented and discuss? I think we have to do that.
Yeah, I think you
Okay.
all, because you're the two of you are presiding.
Yeah, assuming everybody's been able to see the slate that we've presented, is there a motion to adopt or accept the slate as presented?
A motion to accept?
A motion to, yeah, accept. Yeah, is there a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting this slate of officers signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any who oppose, nay. Abstentions, okay, motion passes, congratulations. Well, not.
Thank you all for your turning me to another term as your chair, and I appreciate having a wonderful vice chair, who has, really knows the city and knows issues and knows how to get things done, and I rely on his counsel. I just would, I've said in the last couple of years, and a couple of you have taken me up on it, you know, if there's anything that I'm doing that you feel like we can do better, please contact me. You all have my email, you all have my cell phone number, and I appreciate it. Some of you have taken me up on that, and I hope you found those discussions to be constructive and have led to positive change. But I really want to hear from all of you, and I want us all to continue in the wonderful work that we're doing and support the fabulous Stash organization. So thank you again for another term as chair. All right, we move on into the TNS report. I know Jordan is here representing Hillary. And we've all read the report, so I think we can just go to questions to Jordan. Hearing none. I know you're also going to present on the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority letter of support, which we also have in our board packet. Are there questions on the letter? There are 2 projects that are funded by the letter, and those bullet points are up there. Both fantastic projects. Last, there's a motion to adopt the letter to NVTA. So moved. Second, Jesse, second by Matt. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Jordan. We always ask if there are other reports by other members of the board. You all serve on boards, commissions, community groups. Is there anything for the good of the group that you want to share? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. We have our meeting minutes from April that are included in the packet. Are there any revisions to the minutes as they were presented? If not, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion.
Adopted by Reach. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
And just so you know, Robert's rules don't require a motion to adopt. It's only if.
Oh, there's a change. Okay.
Just so you
Okay,
know.
I think you told me.
The city may have different rules, but.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Review of financials. Edward.
Edward is out sick, but I'm here to answer any questions you all might have. And I just wanted to summarize a few important things about the current fiscal year. The last time we met, we were projecting a budget deficit. Unfortunately, for a number of reasons, that deficit has now been wiped out. So we are now projecting to finish the fiscal year with a balanced position. The basics of how we're getting there. One is that we have implemented some cost control measures for the remainder of the fiscal year that are not anything that affect customer experience, largely any small discretionary purchases or items that can be deferred in some way, shape, or form. We've also taken our foot off the accelerator a little bit, figuratively speaking, around getting our electric bus fleet fully back on the road. We have some lingering issues with a few units. The biggest contributor to our budget deficit this year is from maintenance, but they are expenses that we needed to take on around getting the electric fleet back on the road, as well as to address some other issues that were going on. So credit goes to John and his team for working so hard on getting the fleet where we need to be. And we have managed that overrun elsewhere in the budget. The other contributing factor is our self-insurance premium equivalents, which we project out for the year, have come in lower based on actuals. And so that is an area of a substantial savings. And we projected out in our close of the fiscal year an average of claims throughout the current year that have been accrued. Understanding there is a risk that there could be an unusually large claim that hits us in the next month or two, but let's all knock on wood that that's not going to happen. And we continue as we are. All those factors come together to help us reach a balanced position. And the last thing I'll note is that there's actually a potential that there could be some surplus in that account that could be retained to help reduce expenses for next year and help us with what is shaping up. If I was a weather forecaster, I would be telling you there's a big storm brewing, and that is for next year's budget, which we all are aware of. And I'll speak to that in just a moment. But The other thing that I would note is that fuel throughout the year had been lower. And so that was a helpful factor, even though fuel prices are currently double our budgeted amount, we're still able to maintain that balanced year end. So that leads me into just a quick mention about next year's budget. And that is to flag to the board that with fuel being the way that it is, and I'm sure the city is seeing this both with the city fleet and schools, if fuel prices stay where they are, we're double our current budget, and are double our budget for the next fiscal year. So, we're projecting that if nothing changes, we could be facing a $1.3 million overrun just in fuel. And so that's certainly concerning. A couple of things we need to know about that is, of course, that's a projection based on worst case scenario, but I think what I've asked my team to do is to be talking about and looking at our mitigation potential options around that. But to be frank, there is nothing in our budget that's that magnitude and a discretionary non-direct operating expense. So the only way to plug a hole like that is going to be through service reductions. The other potential options that I'm exploring is I'm going to be spending some time in Richmond talking with the state about this crisis and understanding what potentially they might look at doing to help localities that are facing these fuel prices and the effects of them, because it's not unique to Dash, right? Every other transit system in Virginia is going to be going through the same thing. So I don't have any news on that, but that's going to be a conversation I'm going to be having. Of course, the city has SAOs, and supplemental appropriation ordinances in the fall and spring. I will, obviously have conversations with the city manager and the city budget staff to understand what is the city talking about in regards to how we potentially address fuel cost overruns across the board, and certainly have some more perspective for you all. We'll include this potentially as a discussion item with the joint work session scheduled in September. And certainly we will want to come back to you with what I would call sort of a point of no return point, that if nothing changes, where's the last time that we can take action to affect a change through a service reduction? We know that council has no appetite for that kind of action, and we would never want to do that, but we need to be able to come to the table to understand what would we do if the situation was such that we had to do that. So we'll be looking at all of those things for you, but I did want to flag that because the motto in budgeting and accounting is no surprises, as I know Art and his colleagues will often say. The last thing that I mentioned is that our next year's budget accounts for everything in the collective bargaining agreement and everything else. So if fuel prices were not an issue, I think we would be managing a tight budget, but one that we could accomplish. Again, it's to be determined. Negotiations for the next collective bargaining agreement would start up again this fall. And so there would also need to be some discussion with our union about what this looks like going forward and whether or not this sustains. What are the options that we have in place? So those are the budget. That's the current fiscal year. And I want to wrap up just again by giving a shout out to the team for all the hard work that they put in throughout the fiscal year in trying to manage this budget, and to account for these unexpected issues and find creative ways to address and change spending and other things in a way to get us to a balanced year end.
Is fuel equal electricity too? Is that included, or is that rate staying the same?
The electric rate is unchanged as far as I know.
Okay.
But remember, there's some complexities around that because it's the cities, it's all the cities stuff, not Dash's uniquely.
So in as part of the budget process, the manager puts forward what's called technical adjustments. It's prior to add delete. And I believe one of the technical adjustments I have to go back and check was a contingency for looking at utilities, because I think some of the rate stuff Dominion's talking about is significant, but also is kind of their first number and it bounces back and forth. So pressure's there too.
Yeah.
On the electricity side. It's a much smaller, nominally a much smaller part of your budget than fuel, but still.
Yeah.
As a rate percentage, it's looking like it's gonna go up.
All right, for being interested.
Josh, I was curious to learn more about the self-insurance reserves. And because it said something about Dash will be able to recognize a portion of those. And remaining reserves are carried forward. So how tight are the policies around? How much of those can be recognized to sort of plug a gap? In a short budget year? I just don't understand, are there like really tight mechanics around that, or is there a lot of management discretion on like how much that tool can be used?
So. I'm not gonna be the greatest to answer that question absent of Edward, but. Our thinking is because we are basically a chunk of money is being sent into that. Every month, or being set aside for that, we could, if we have a high balance remaining and we do some projections and see experience continuing to be low. That we would then reduce the amount of money that's having to transfer out and have that flexibility. From a perspective of is your question about how we can move it around if we're
It's-
allowed?
Yeah, what's the discretion around that? And like, are there? What prompts it? For example, if we weren't in a tight budget situation because of fuel here toward the end of the fiscal year. Would you still recognize a surplus in reserves?
No, historically, the city takes any balance that's at the end of the year and takes it back to, I guess, the general fund or whatnot, and redistributes it elsewhere in the city to plug any overages. I think that I highlighted this because I think that is something for us to speak with budget staff about and to flag and say, hey, if we sort of keep everything equal, we're gonna be able to bring some money to the table. But again, it's not $1.3 million. But it's something, and so that was something we wanted to highlight within the city, and we will do that.
Thanks.
Three things, two smaller, one bigger. The pause and repair maintenance, is there any sort of long-term consequences to that? Like, are we gonna fall behind on maintaining those buses such that it'll be harder to get them back on if we want to?
We're not, yeah, Stephanie's shaking her head, no, we're not pausing maintenance so much as there's some big dollar amounts that had to be invested into units to get them back on the road. Is that fair to say? You can speak.
They're not in service right now, they require these costs to get back in service, they're essentially just sitting until we decide to make that.
Right, and keeping them out of service is not causing any consequences,
It does, but not as significant as the expenditure to get them back on the road, so essentially we have vehicles that are probably past useful life that are still in service. So they cost more to maintain, but not to the degrees how much it would cost to get them.
Cool, alright. Our charter revenue is about $100,000 short. Is that a result of like one anticipated contract that didn't come through, or was there just sort of like we anticipated market demand and materializing?
We're not taking as many charters because we're trying to address a FMCSA requirement around us providing services that leave Virginia. And so we paused taking any charter work that leaves Virginia. And so that eliminates trips into DC or Maryland. And it's a technicality around drug testing, whose drug testing protocols we're following. We follow FTAs. There's the FMCSA as well as DOT identification and that kind of stuff. We're hopeful to get back to that. But that's, I think.
Sure, and I'm not side by siding FY 26 financials with the FY 27 budget. Do we have reduced FY 27 budget because of that?
I don't think we lowered the charter projections from a revenue perspective. I think we're hopeful that we're gonna be able to get back into that.
Okay.
It's just a matter of resolving the question around how do we administer the drug test.
Okay, those are the two, so the bigger question in response to the fuel crisis, we obviously, we just had our public hearing on our budget about 15 minutes ago, such as it was. And we don't approve the budget until next month. Do we still have a mechanism left in front of us where we should at least make some partial adjustment to the budget we're gonna pass to address some of this $1.3 million shortfall? Like, I totally appreciate that you guys are gonna throw out a ton of mitigation strategies with this and it could work out. I guess the question I'm asking is like, how reasonable is it for us to pass a budget anticipating this? Should we take some sort of step to make some minor adjustments throughout the budget to reallocate more resources towards fuel? Not changing the top line number, obviously.
Well, no, can I just ask a clarifying question? Mitigation strategies are to get you to the end of 26 balance, right? So like, you've mentioned pausing Proterra, you're not pausing at all through 27 to deal with this too.
No,
Yeah, because that's what makes sure we're talking about two different,
Yeah.
the strategy we're talking about is just to get them through the next two months.
yeah,
And then, but that's slightly separate. Your question was, which is before we adopt the budget next month, do we need to kind of preemptively pause some things in the budget to mitigate?
I guess, yes, I'm asking if you
Yeah.
need to make some last minute changes.
Sure.
We expected our FY 27 budget to be, given how much we anticipate the fuel this year. Okay.
I think it would be hard because the changes we put in would lack the opportunity for public feedback. Because we've already passed that timeline and we have to adopt the budget in June. Many of the little levers that we pull are like 50 cents here, $1 there. They're not, the 1.3 million. And so my thinking was that we would, on our side, do what I would call a soft start with the budget, just continue to kind of hold where we can. But I just want to be really clear, there's nowhere in our budget that you could cut and snip to get to 1.3 million without touching service. And so it becomes a question of, do you want to just completely take away everything that is not direct service related in the budget and maybe make a dent in this, or just set it aside and understand that this is potentially the number that we're facing, and find things such as state funds or other mechanisms that could potentially directly plug that and not have the adverse effect it would have on the rest of the organization.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Josh, when you and I had our kind of pre-board meeting conversation, you had briefed me on this. I had asked about the line 32 additional service that was being implemented, and that whether there was a mechanism, the timing of it, and whether there was any mechanism to delay that to try to offset some of this. You were recommending against that. Just for the benefit of the group, could you share kind of when that service goes into effect and why you
Sure,
are
we're
not
gonna-
recommending that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We're gonna roll that service out as quick as possible, I think sometime in July. We are sensitive to the fact that council has a very specific desire to see organizations like ours use the funds that they're allocating for that purpose and not to change the use of them. And we've seen where, not us, but other entities, I think, have sort of tried to do that, and it's been met swiftly with a lot of issues. So again, that I think council's aware of of sort of what's going on with fuel and those conversations. I think that the place that we have that kind of conversations is going to be in the fall. But I don't think that's an appropriate way to tackle this.
Other questions by Josh?
All right.
Thank you.
We'll keep working on it. We'll keep you all posted.
So just on that, we're gonna start the service, the added service in July.
Mhm.
I get that. If because that's kind of the new, kind of the last in is probably first out, if we did have to do service cuts to figure this out, is there any sort of harm beyond the political part of this that we're not thinking of? That you might start a service in June and we get to October and be like, something's gotta give, this is the thing to give, that you only did that.
Mhm.
Is that a problem beyond just, changes in schedule stink no matter when they happen? Anything beyond that we should be thinking about?
Well, I think a piece of when David asked me this question that I clarified is also the amount of time it takes for us to mobilize the service.
Yeah.
Or to pull service back is, it's not an on-off switch, it's quickly, kind of, I think what you're getting at, and it all centers around the bid process and sort of putting all that back out there. So, yeah, I mean, I think the concern that we have about, not delaying the mobilization of that service is then when we decide, okay, move forward, it might take us longer to be able to get that service on the road. And so that's an issue, and we're really, I think, concerned about just ending up in a situation where we're in the budget and there's this discussion of, well, we don't see anything having happened with the money that we put towards this and we want to see done with this. I mean, it is within the board's purview, and you can decide that you want to give an instruction that we delay the implementation of that service. And that's certainly a direction I will take from you all if that's what you want to see us do. My response was, I don't think that would bode well in the eyes of our stockholders when they've specifically designated those funds for a service and they want to see that service on the road because they're talking about that investment in the community.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I am wondering though, at what point council will start to look at the budget overall, and are they going to do a supplemental for every city department that uses tremendous amounts of fuel, or, you know, because I mean, to Art's point, yeah, it would be really tough to then get into a situation where we're cutting service back. I mean, that may not be the low, I mean, I guess it probably also depends how much direction we're given, what dollar amount we have to need from service. That may not be the lowest hanging fruit, because that service is expected to be fairly productive, but it would be, I guess I might be more comfortable doing that if I thought that our council members are asking city departments to start to come up with ideas for ways that we can save, but absent that, then they just gave very specific instructions that this route be enhanced.
Hey, Josh, I got one more question. I'm just looking at this. I'm not sure if I'm looking at this correctly. On the overtime numbers, it looks like the actuals for the first quarter rate are a pretty significant increase from what was budgeted. Is that because of storms? Basically, is that where a lot of these numbers come from? Or?
So glad you asked. A couple months ago, that's a similar question was asked, sort of what's going on with overtime, and the team has done a lot of work researching this and trying to figure out what is the exact contributor. The answer is it's complex. There's no one specific answer, but what we have found is that we had a spike that occurred in overtime, and we believe that the top three contributing factors are that we had a dip in our bus operator headcount, and we've been struggling to recover from that. And so that we averaged 10 operators short for the past year, basically. So we have, I hate to put it this way, but we have somewhat of a revolving door at the bottom where the people we hire are most often the people who leave. And so we're kind of constantly in this game of trying to catch up. We have applications coming in, we have people training, we have people going in on the road, but it's a question of how long we're able to keep them. The other things that have contributed is our overall headcount requirement has increased. And so, for example, in July of 2023, we needed 175 full-time operators compared to what is now 206 full-time operators. We have a higher headcount, and so we're constantly chasing that. And then absences are increasing. We're not entirely sure if this is more of a data being more accurate, sort of reflecting that, or it's based on increased leave usage. But we are working on continuing to identify that. So we are planning to address this. We've reduced the scheduling of show-up operators that cover open work to help get buses back on schedule and move heavy loads, for example. Those sometimes are referred to as ghost buses, and the things that we put out on the road to kind of pick up extra people. And we're going to continue to ramp up our efforts and recruit. We haven't stopped recruiting, and we sort of kept that pipeline open. but we're gonna see how we can bump that up further. So it's a hard question to answer. We're also evaluating whether a change in our attendance policy had an impact. But yeah, it is one of the items that actually had notes about it because it is something we've been looking at so closely.
Well, thanks. That's super informative, and I think part of it is explained by the surplus that we're seeing, significant surplus in the actuals on wages compared
Yep.
to what was budgeted. So
That's right.
some of that new hiring activity is going to wipe out the shortage on the overtime side. So anyway, thanks. That's useful.
And when a new CBA goes into place, that often is a little helpful on recruitment.
Mhm.
For people who might come to us from another system, if our pay was below them, it might switch over.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it back over to you, or we can hand it directly to Stevie if you would like to.
Yep.
Her to come on up, and she's gonna run through the ATSP, which is a reminder. She's gonna summarize the outreach and what we've heard and any of your questions, and then you if you're so willing, at the end of her presentation, we'd ask you to take action to approve the ATSP. You can, if you are uncomfortable for any reason, you can wait to approve it until noon if necessary. Go ahead, Stevie.
Good evening, everyone. We have two updates to go over from the draft that you had seen in February. One, we were just discussing, so as you're aware, we've got supplemental funding for line 32. And as I had mentioned, we plan to put this in for our schedule changes for July the 12th. And just kind of offhand, if that were to decide to be delayed from next in November. So what that means is this is the off-peak time. It's currently 60-minute frequency. We're gonna take that up to 30 minutes. Yeah. And we know, so I'll talk again, that additional outreach to make sure the community is aware that this is coming so that they can use it. We will be conducting quite a bit more of that before the roll out. Is there anything about this want to discuss any further? Okay, great. The bulk of what I wanted to show you guys is something you haven't seen whatsoever. And first, I want to give kudos to the marketing team who put together a lot of this work, made it happen, and pulled all of these slides together. So there's not room for us tonight, but I know Camilla's online. Having specific questions. So this year we did a pretty similar time frame as the year before. But we made sure to piggyback off of all these other events that we have presence at anyhow. And I asked that we kind of map this across the region to show where we were physically. These are just the events that we were at physically, not to mention at bus stops, riding along, collecting surveys on the buses themselves. Previously, there were quite a few questions asked the year before, a lot of open-ended information, and I think there was a lack of desire to provide feedback because it's just so tedious. So we tried to ask more pointed questions, narrow it down, make it more specific to what was actually in the ATSP this year. So kind of trying to compare that side by side. We more than doubled our responses, still got quite a bit of unique comments, which all of that is in the packet as well. And our biggest question overall was, how do you feel about that? How would you rate our performance? And throughout this presentation, you'll see all of the blue selections are very positive. Anything in the yellow or red is in the negative, gray being neutral. So overall, we're very satisfied. This one will take a minute to kind of talk through. So like I said, the blue were positive, in the sense, not a negative for red, just lesser value. So what we wanted to know, we asked about reliability, hear this over and over again. And we wanted to know, what does that mean to you? Some people think reliability has to do with frequency, others with bus bunching, schedule adherence. There's different categories. So what we did is we asked folks to rank these from 1 to 8, 1 being the most important. 8 not necessarily least important, just not highest on their protocols there. And we decided we were gonna kind of cluster these, that's why I asked. So we have these first 3, right? I think frequency is pretty clearly our winner. We hear that time and time again, that's what the public wants. Most of the responses in the blue were pretty clear. But close runners up were more accurate schedules and more consistent travel times. In the middle, we wanted to see kind of an indifference or I could take it or leave it. Some things were more important to me than these, but these do have value for better rider communications and bus stop amenities. And then kind of at the lower end of the totem pole for folks, said these weren't their highest priority items, were buses with crowding, seeing more technology on the buses or at their stops, and then bus bunching being the least most important item. I know this is kind of a lot to digest, if anybody wants to ask for some clarity, please.
Just a quick follow-up question. Did you guys ask a question on late night service? I know that's a big hot topic.
No, this one specifically, because this was relating to reliability, not about the service profile overall.
Were you able to tell what they thought bus technology is? Was it the app? Was it, you know, the markers on when the next bus is?
Yeah, specifically, this was left vague to kind of encompass all of these things, but we did get a lot of feedback specifically about things that were problematic to people or things that they really valued, specifically when it came to technology. And we'll hit on that here in a minute.
Thank you.
Of course. So along the line 32, Rick made a small improvement previously. This was something we wanted to know, did people know that this even happened? And this was kind of a 2-part question. If you answered yes, there was a follow-up question, and that was really to see what kind of an impact this had on your travel. And if you said no, it just kind of went on. So we saw 78% of the respondents had no idea this even happened. So this was a big red flag for us to say, hey, if we have the funding to fully expand the service, we really need to get out there and make sure people know about it so that they can use it. And it was great. We thought it was kind of interesting to see, even though we're giving more service to folks, some people found it less convenient. And we had to dig in a little bit to find out what that could possibly mean. And we came to the conclusion in some ways that because we added these short trips, if folks weren't aware that it wasn't the full length of the line, it forced them to transfer. And because we asked fewer questions, the communications team was able to squeeze in a couple that helped them for planning purposes in the future, which was pretty great that they found out the ways that people were getting their information and that it was more than one source of information. Some 2 or 3, quite a few people may have even just misread the question and checked every box. They use all of these things, but hey, that's great if they do. And we looked at all of the comments, and it was really impressive just how many people wanted to say something. And they were a mixed bag, some positive, definitely some feedback that needed, some work. But there were 5 different categories that we kind of lumped a lot of these things into, and I just wanted to put a sample of these things out here for you. So new buses and technology deployment being one of those categories in particular that people really just have an opinion about. And like I said, some were the tracker doesn't always work, that could use some updating. Or, they love the new buses. They love having the real-time information at stops. So I didn't want to put these all on here, just read them to you. There's tons of. And that's really kind of all of this in a nutshell. If anybody wants to ask me, please.
I think it was the first or second slide, you said response rates were up 90% from last year. Can you talk to any of the mechanisms that you used this year to get a higher response rate, if any?
Everything was comparable thoughtful in the way it was done. I think simply being out and present in the community more than just asking for online responses or surveys while on buses. We were able to dedicate more actual like staff to going out into the community. So I think our physical presence lured people in. Just to be able to talk to someone and ask questions, not necessarily in the survey to the people that were there.
Face-to-face communication.
Yeah, that made a big difference.
I also want to make sure I correctly understand where we are in the agenda, because you have one slide on the Route 32 changes
Yes.
in the plan, and then the rest was about the outreach.
Yes,
My question was about the substance of the plan, not about the outreach.
of course.
Dave, was the next thing we were gonna do to adopt the plan? Or like, is this our chance to talk
Well,
about the
as
substance
Josh
of the
said,
plan?
we normally do it in May, but we have the option to defer to June if
Okay,
there are any
got it.
changes we can bring back. to
All
staff.
right, yeah, I had two questions. One was around the CIP table. Table 1, 2 compared to what we saw in February. There's a column for the out years. Which for fleet replacement has gone up by over 70 million. It was like 115, now it's 192. The header for that column also now includes FY 2036. But the title of the table only goes through FY 2035.
I can explain why those are a
So,
little different.
yeah, what's going on there?
Initially,
So we can follow on the page number, it's on for the target.
Sure, it's on plan page 22, which I think is packet page 41.
Okay, thank you.
so the initial table that was developed was through the previous period of the ATSB, and the updated one includes the additional year. So that's the title being different. The numbers that are different, the initial one is what the city calculates for year over year for bus replacement. And the number that I have updated is our pie in the sky scenario if we were fully electric. So the max cost we could possibly anticipate in that period if we bought all electric buses, as opposed to the fleet plan that has been intermixing different technologies.
Okay, because my second question was about the fleet plan, which for everyone following along is like 3 pages before that. So plan page 19, tonight's packet, page 38, where I think like the sort of yellow staircase diagram is the same as it was in the February draft.
Yes.
But the numbers down below are extremely different, where, for example, it says FY 26-27, the first column, that there are 18 electric expansion buses. And then there are 23 replacement buses in the final year, or I think are the 2 biggest changes in that, which are like, is that correct?
Getting that far out, there's like some wiggle room. I think it's kind of where it's kind of questionable, I think is the best way to answer that. When we get that far out, we're saying these things have gotten to their useful life and they're ready for replacement. But typically, because we don't want to go out and just procure 23 buses all at once, we end up spreading them out. So the further the plan goes, those numbers are kind of placeholders
Okay.
for the future.
Well, what about in the near term? Because in the first column, in the May version of the plan, it has 18 electric expansion buses. Which were not, I think there were 4 in there in the March version. Have we had that much of a change in our electric fleet expansion in the past 3 months?
No. Say, I may look to you for added explanation for how you're calculating these.
I suspect these actually might be, could be erroneous, let us double check that,
Okay,
because the 23 should be different, we'll need to double check.
okay, thanks. And then last thing is just a comment. I want to let the team know that I noticed and appreciated that the word clean diesel is out of our vocabulary in this plan. Thank you.
I did.
And then Praveen, let me ask you just to clarify my question. Do you want to then push this to June, the approval, so we see the chart or?
Yeah, if there might be an error and the team has to check it, I would not feel good approving it the way it is today. Unless you guys are telling me we're buying 18 electric expansion buses this year,
Okay.
I know we got a lot of electric buses on order, grants and whatnot, but yeah, it'd be good for us to clean that up. And it's fine if you end up adopting this in June, we won't have to do a whole presentation, we'll just incorporate the correction and send it out to you.
okay.
Yeah.
And the month delay doesn't slow anything else down in terms of what you do with this.
No, I don't think.
No, and there's specific.
Stevie's just trying to get it out of your way.
Yeah. In the event there was a discussion that was like, we're going in another direction,
Right.
make that adjustment and bring it back.
Just one observation. In this case, Praveen's got a question, merits revisiting. I'm sure the staff will revisit, and total appreciation to the staff and how busy everyone is. I have noticed a bit of a tendency, and I can't speak for everyone, I can only speak for myself, but where questions have been asked and there is this need to revisit and to come back with information. I personally have never gotten follow-up information that I've asked about in a meeting. So I just want to make sure that we're setting out a culture that is board members ask questions, and if the expectation is, hey, we're going to follow up with information, that there is some sort of delivery mechanism. I appreciate the staff and everything you guys do and how busy everyone is, but I just don't want there to be that gap where questions are asked and there isn't the follow-up that's being requested. That's all.
What we've done in other commissions is have in the minutes old business and then make sure to check off the old business, so with the follow-up
Do that.
is completed.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that's happened, but we'll certainly go back and.
Thanks. That's all. Thanks. Yeah.
Good question about outreach. Do you have a breakdown of the different languages? Survey was in 5 languages, right? So what were the
Yes.
responses rates for the different languages?
I don't know, Camilla is online, she can speak to that.
Hang on, Camilla, I'll allow you to talk here. Camilla, you should be able to unmute yourself if you're there.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, okay. Yes, sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
So the survey was available in 5 languages. What's the breakdown of the respondents?
We did five different languages, and the main language obviously was English, second was Spanish, and then the other ones, I can go back and give you the exact numbers, but it was mostly Spanish.
Okay. So I'm just concerned about like, how much are we spending translating this into different languages, and what's our outreach to those different communities if we're not getting responses back in those languages? So whether it's like more outreach connecting with those communities directly to make sure their communities are getting that response and getting that back to us and they feel comfortable, not just trying to get to us in English. I think that needs to be like looked at. But if it's still mostly English and Spanish, I would like to see the breakdown of the numbers.
Yes, we can definitely send you those numbers. We did go out, like Stevie said, we had a lot of staff availability this time around, so we were able to go to different bus stops. We do have a diverse team, so we have people in my team that speak Spanish and Amharic, so that's always something positive. But obviously, we're not able to cover all the other different languages. So we did partner up with a lot of community organizations. We shared that information. We shared flyers, but obviously, we're going to do our best next year to do more specific outreach to those communities. We might have to find translation services to actually go to those places with someone that can translate to different languages.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Great question. Is there anything else for Stevie? Thank you so much.
Sure. I'm actually gonna tackle our ridership conversation this afternoon. Just because it's a little different, as you know, we've had that little hanging asterisk for a while. We have completed our NTE certification. So our APCs are now vital sources of information. And I don't know how many we looked in advance, we're like, why do we have two different charts that we're looking at? So I wanted to make sure we talked about that. The current reporting is now using expanded data in order to show the full picture of what the ridership is. And basically what that means is where there were passenger counts that were not collected, the bus went out, the machine wasn't functioning. The expansion algorithm will calculate how many people should have been on that bus based on existing averages from other collections. So we don't have gaps in data. So in this sense, now that we are able to make that prediction, when we put those numbers in the historical data that you see, it looks like an enormous jump, which isn't necessarily representative of what's happening out there. This next slide shows a normalized comparison using the now certified methodology for all of our reporting purposes. And it takes into consideration all of the previously reported data and normalizes it using this algorithm to give us an apples to apples comparison. So this gives you that sense that the year over year trend is much more stable and aligned with what we would expect based on our service levels and our ridership patterns.
So I guess the other question is, do we have social media plan for April talking about being over 600,000 riders? I mean, like it's 100,000 more than we've ever talked about before.
I think that, to your point, the story is actually this fiscal year is substantially higher than we were thinking it was. In fact, October would stand out as a record-breaking month, even more so than it was. I think actually October dipped a little bit under the old methodology, so there must have been some
We had
data
that to the government shutdown, but now it looks like we actually broke a record.
Right, exactly. But yes, we have a lot of celebrating to do. We had a good thing to celebrate before, now we have an even better thing to celebrate. So, yeah, we're gonna talk about.
Hold it, I mean, it suggests that May will set our all-time high.
It does, yeah.
Under this new method, the normalized data, what is our total for the fiscal year, you know?
I can pull it up. I don't have it on hand.
Yeah, I'm trying to do head math and too many numbers, so.
I have the spreadsheet, so I'll see if I can grab it for you while we're here. But
Yeah, we found that we were underrepresenting our data probably about 12%. And again, that was just kind of what was not captured.
Do we ever market for, oh, sorry. Do we ever market projected data to say like, you know, fine, we were 100,000 up, sorry, 100,000 riders over for this period in fact, but like, you know, speaking to the question of what does full year 2026 look like, we're projecting a 30% increase or whatever that number is, like, do we ever market on the go forward, or is it just?
We have just gone through this process, so I don't think we've yet had a conversation about what do we do with this information now that we have it. But that's a great suggestion. Where do we go from here? At this standardized data.
Yeah, if we're looking at a huge bump for the year, maybe it shouldn't just be what were the actuals, but it's like, you know, hey, like it's gonna be this much longer for the full year, but you know.
so the number year to date through April is 5.7 million riders. Yeah, we will probably break 6 million rides.
What was it we broke last year, because we were super excited about that?
4.7?
Yeah.
So last year was what, 5.4?
That's 5 something last year.
Oh, last year was 5.6.
5.6.
5.6, yes. You already hit that.
We were 5.6 last year.
I remember the balloon.
Even with the old balloons.
Yeah, I remember the big.
Okay, well, wow. Great, you know, yeah, so yeah, we're gonna hit over 6 million this year, sure. There'll be a lot of celebrating to do.
Is it on the budget? Just kidding.
I just wanted to, oh, sorry, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I wanted to better understand, like, what was the actual difference in the methodology? I didn't quite catch.
Oh, I was gonna ask if it clicked what, because Steve and I had to have a conversation around this, and I was like,
Yeah, it was complicated to understand that they were using, the actual totals that were collected from the people who stepped in on and off the bus. To create what a normal day would look like. In order to make up for, if a bus is running, bus. 6, 7, 8, 9, is running out on the road and this machine is just not capturing where there's something going on. It knows what routes, how long it's been out there, and what a typical day of ridership based on previous information that bus should have had in those counts. And it will fill in those blanks. To give us that aggregate total.
Okay. And versus before,
It was just what was actually captured.
that data was missing,
So
because
extrapolate.
that bus was running without data reporting, so it just wasn't there.
so
So
it's
now-
reporting as zero, is reporting actuals.
Zero.
The machine was broken?
Yeah.
So we had some normalized days. And some 0 days.
Right, we still have the ability to tell the system not to add, like for the snowstorm, to tell it. If it's saying there were only 20 people on the bus, but normally there's 200, it's not going to fill in that gap, it's gonna say that was just a low day.
Yeah.
If it just captured nothing, then it expands the data to say, okay, there was a problem, we need to fill this gap.
Okay, yeah, so there were enough problems that were reported as zeros. That when you go fill those back in with normal days. The aggregate count goes up by 12%. Okay. And so I'm just trying to trace back to like, because 12% is a huge difference, so like.
Yeah.
The why and the how is that there are a lot of days when counts were not being. The machines were broken, that's kind of at the root of the under counting. And those got reported as zero,
Right.
okay, I got it.
Which in and of itself is beneficial because now it gives us the opportunity to have a health monitoring system to make sure that our equipment is actually capturing things perfectly. So it will, over time, have to expand less and less of the data that we're monitoring. That this is actually coming in appropriately, and that was kind of part of the process to get certified, was to do those checks and balances, what was working correctly.
Thank you.
So are you guys like checking weekly or monthly? For 0 days?
At this point, we're kind of almost daily, because we get a weekly report, we have it set up that way where it's telling us what buses aren't functioning appropriately, and we're trying to find where along the series of information data is being collected, transmitted, stored, processed, like where in those steps it's not happening. And so different pieces of hardware have different issues at different times, different vehicles, so each one can be its own problem. So it takes a lot of technicians, problem solve, resolve.
Another question, so October, for example, had that big jump, we had assumed that was a dip because of the government shutdown. I mean, people are still riding our buses during that time, but there may have been people whose commuting patterns changed or are staying home. So for October, with this big jump, we're not looking and say, well, this bus normally has 200 people, I've had 30 people, and that's an issue. We were only subbing the ones that were zero, because, okay, because I just want to make sure that we weren't then saying, oh, well, so there's some anomaly. I mean, there could be that a pandemic with stay-at-home orders, and so that could change our.
Yeah.
We're not taking those and saying, no, those have to be what it was, and so what it was the month before.
Exactly.
Okay,
If it collected data, it reports that as true.
okay.
If there's nothing, that's the only time.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, because I always, the October jump is a little surprising to what we saw out there. I mean, very encouraging and speaks to just how many people are using it to move around even when they're not going to work, but, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't then trying to take the month before and she pointed.
Right. Yeah, then we would probably have a pretty flat line, if we just looked at every month before.
Well, I guess it depends, you might just have more equipment malfunctions that month, but it sounds like. Okay. All right, thank you.
And this process, the NTD certification is the National Transit Database, so this is a federal requirement, and the people who do this signed off and said, you are now satisfying our requirements to have accurate data collection. So it's not like we at Dash made this up and we're decided, well, this is how we're gonna fill it in. This is an industry standard and what is used in industry reporting.
When you say the vendor refined the algorithm, is that the vendor of the counting technology, or is there a separate certifier that you're referring to?
It was the vendor that we get our data from had to go through each of these issues to determine what was actually a problem versus like the small counts. That was part of the algorithm. Okay, that actually counted as data. We're not including that in the expansion. So they were working through what actually needed to be reported. And then they were verifying the counts that the machinery was capturing with video evidence to say, okay, the bus said 10 people got on, the video shows 10 people got on. So they had to go through all of this to make sure that the way that it was counting was accurate.
I think I got that, but I think I didn't ask my question well. Are they like, do they provide the counting system? Or do they just certify the counts? Like, what's the total scope of the vendor that you're referring
I
to?
think he's asking about who does the hardware and who does the software. Is that what you're asking?
I'm just asking, there's a reference to a vendor
Yeah,
who changed
pop through.
a methodology.
There's a
So,
data
like,
processor,
Okay.
pop through is the data process.
all right, and so what do they do for Dash? What's their scope?
Their scope is to accept all the data. Well, can you answer that?
Yeah, so, right, they took all of the incoming information and processed it so that we could turn around and present it as real information. But they're behind the scenes, that was the formula that they had to work on in order to come up with that expansion for what was missing. And they were using historical data to do that piece, as well as say the hardware piece of it, it's not theirs,
Okay,
was compatible. The information that we're receiving.
no,
Yeah, we own the hardware on the buses, so the pop through is solely the processor of the data and collector.
Yes, Mr. Stephen. Thank you.
All right, just a quick update for you all, as we've been trying to do more of is to give you some insights into what we've been doing within the community, because we've been very active. And that's been a priority for the board. So over the past month, we've continued to be very strong and visible in the community with our partnership, special events, and public engagement efforts. This month, we launched 2 new bus routes, one recognizing Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and another supporting Alexandria's role in welcoming the Croatian national soccer team during the 2026 FIFA World Cup. We are also preparing for an important milestone coming up in our zero emission transition, which is the groundbreaking for the on-route charger, opportunity charger at the West Alexandria Transit Center. And everyone's gotten an invite to that at this point. I think it's on the calendar. If you haven't gotten an invitation or got that date, please let us know, and Beth will make sure that information gets to you. In April, we were also proud to host the CTAV State Rodeo, and our members participated there. You can see the picture on the far right. Linnell Glover, our rodeo champ, won once again, and has just returned from competing at the national competition in Omaha, Nebraska, where he placed 5th. Stephanie informed me. Stephanie made the trip out there to support him, and we're really proud of his continued representation of Dash, both on the state level and the national level. And we've also continued community outreach through our local events, school partnerships, and neighborhood engagement activities, which includes the Dash Nights Out with Alexandria City High School Athletics. Pictured here is the ACPS softball and ACPS baseball teams. I was there, and I don't, you see this picture on the left here. If I can show you, I hadn't noticed this before, but they've actually got a little dash on the back of their caps too. So it's not just the jersey, but their hat as well has the dash. So pretty cool. Really proud to see that, and we did have our team there supporting them, and I think they ended up winning that game. I wasn't able to stay the whole time, but it was a rough start when I was watching, so maybe me leaving was helpful. But that's it. Mr. Chair, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Thanks. I've gotten some instructions from staff, so they're going to basically break down the room except for our table when we go into executive session, so we're gonna pause and allow that to happen. The only thing we have to do when we're done is to stack our chairs over there. The tables can stay up, and the goal is for us to finish up by 7:30. I will announce before we go into exec session, our next meeting will be June 10th. We'll be at the Dash headquarters of the boardroom.
And there will be food at that.
And there will be food, and I'll coordinate with Emmanuel to get more of the details so we can flesh out the rest of the agenda. Is there a motion to go into executive session? The verbiage is on the screen.
Sure. I'm Matt Harris, move that the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters pursuant to section 2.2-3711 (A1) of the Code of Virginia.
Moves their second. Second. Jesse, all in favor? Aye. We are in executive session. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.